The conversation continues today with Jeff Kaplan of Kaplan Law Firm in Oviedo. We're talking today about estate planning for blended families. We've been talking through estate planning with all the different phases of life, but blended families, that's one that keeps popping up, especially at the firm with different scenarios. So Jeff, can you just help us make sense of estate planning, especially for blended families?
I certainly hope so. I've been living, eating, and drinking estate planning for it seems like the last month, perfecting and organizing. So yeah, the blended families, that's the next key topic for discussion. This is with typically families that have prior relationships, prior marriages, children. They come in, there's stepchildren, etc. So you have to if that fits your dynamic, then you need to listen closely. For most people, the idea of estate planning raises a lot of questions. But the reality is, for most people, if you do nothing in the pure sense of the estate planning in terms of what happens to your assets, where they go, the law is pretty well designed to do things the way you would do them if you took the time. So for example, if you die without a will, and that's called dying intestate, the law says that the first place your assets will go is to your spouse, if you have one. If you don't have a spouse, it'll go to your children in equal shares. If you don't have children, it'll go to your parents, then it'll go to siblings, and on and on and on. And that's typically how most folks would start their estate planning. So if you are one of the folks in the blended family category, and like many, sometimes you've been blended since the children have been tots, a few months old. So they've essentially become a part of your family. You don't think of them differently. You don't think of them as stepchildren. They're all treated the same. And your goal is to leave everything to all of them equally. Well, if you don't do the estate planning, then if you follow the law to its letter, if you die without a will, let's say you have two children from a prior marriage, your spouse has two children from a prior marriage, and you have one joint child. So if you die, everything's going to first go to your spouse, which would mean all of your assets are going. You would want them to go to all your kids equally, but if you die first, your assets are going to go to your spouse, and then when that spouse dies, everything's going to go to their natural heirs, which are going to include their two children from the prior marriage and your one joint child. So under that scenario, your two kids are essentially disinherited, which isn't the intent, but that's the way the law is set up. And that's why it's especially important for families of, blended children to come talk to an estate planning attorney and get something in place. That's not a result that you want to see. So that's why it's especially important for those folks to come in.
Okay, so what I'm hearing, especially for blended families, is it's really important to make sure that all the children are included in those estate planning documents, and having that conversation with you as their estate planning attorney is really the smartest thing they can do. And I know that you've also been spending a whole lot of time really fine-tuning the trust. So how does the trust play a part in estate planning for blended families?
Right. So as you noted, the first step is to actually just come get in the door. If you do nothing, there's likelihood that somebody's child is going to get left out. It's the survival of the last one standing is essentially who gets everything. So to avoid that, you've got to come in. We've got to sit down and do the normal estate planning, but with blended families especially, you're going to be looking at including a trust. So trusts are generally set up for a couple of reasons, but with blended families, one of your goals is to make sure that after you've passed, most families want, the assets that they owned individually to still be there to take care of their spouse, take care of their needs, take care of their kids' needs, but they'd like to see something left over at the end to go to their family. Let's say there's 5 kids involved, 2, 2, and 1. You want everything to go in equal shares. So under the normal scenario where you just have a will, you would, again, typically leave everything to your spouse, provided they survive you, otherwise to your 5 kids in equal shares. And we're calling steps and bios as children. So that scenario, everyone takes equally. But whoever dies first, you're essentially relying on the surviving spouse to ensure that he or she continues that division. And there is no telling. It's not a matter of trust. It's not a matter of responsibility. It's just a matter of life goes on, especially if one of you passes young and you've got another 30, 40, 50 years of your life. Odds are you're going to start a new life with someone, and that person and their family are going to have needs, and you don't know what kind of impact that has. So one of the things we discussed is setting up a trust that protects a certain portion of your assets so that you know with confidence that there will be something left over for your kids, including all of the kids. So, it's sometimes a difficult discussion to have because it suggests that maybe you don't trust each other, but it's really not about that. It's just about taking the thought process out of it and making sure that you've put a mechanism in place to account for all the children when the time comes. So,
Well, thank you for just kind of catching us up on that. And I know that it's not an issue of, do I trust my partner? But really, like, what is, as a parent, am I doing the best thing for my children and for all the children involved? So I know that the first thing that, you talk about when people come in to meet with you is making sure that these children, if they're young children, sometimes they're adult children, but we want to make sure that everybody's taken care of. But
yeah,
specifically, yeah, go ahead.
so one of my jobs, I've thought, I mean, you may think I'm joking, but I have literally I come in the morning, I sit in my seat, and you leave and you come back the next day and say, weren't you there when I left? I have been working on these
Literally.
documents because just when you think you have it perfect, you think, oh, what about this? And, it brings up a lot of issues. And so part of my job is to raise all the what ifs. And because you can't contemplate every single scenario, you have to create flexibility. You want to create a document that will grow with you. You want to create a document that's going to flex with you, that's going to, put in place the mechanism so that if any of the what ifs happen, you've got it set up correctly. And, on paper, it may look like, well, everything's great if I trust that you will do what you say you're going to do. But if you don't do what you say you're going to do, then my kids miss out. And I don't want to take that risk. Well, if you say it that way, that certainly, it doesn't sit well. But, that's why I come in, because I make it clear that this is not a decision based on trust or reliability or responsibility. It's a decision based on the law, based on who knows what life is going to look like in 5, 10, 15, 20 years? Who knows what hardships, circumstances, or what have you are going to come up? That's why you need to create flexibility. You can create little pockets of assets that will go to address these issues while still maintaining the level of care and financial stability that you're used to. So that's why it's especially critical for blended families to come talk to me, get something in place, and it's not an unaffordable process. I mean, it's not it's not cheap, but it's a necessary expense. It's going to involve a trust, and that's just part of what you got into when you decided to marry somebody with existing kids.
With kids, right?
Yeah.
They come with a package deal. I love
Yeah.
it. Well, the last thing I wanted to bring up, we get this question a lot too, is for blended families, especially who have younger children, minor children at home, the question of guardianship comes up. And we really discussed that quite a bit in our last conversation. So I just want to encourage anybody, if you're in that situation and you're thinking through the process, go watch our video from estate planning for families with minor children, as Jeff really covered that in depth about the topic of guardianship.
Yeah, that topic, the big focus on that topic related in large part to single family with a single parent with minor children, with the idea being that you really don't have any backups built in. When you're married, you've got a married couple, you've got a backup if something happens.
Right.
But in terms of blended families, you may have a backup, but they're not biological backups. They're not blood. They don't have the same sorts of rights. And so if you want that person to be able to continue caring for your kids your biological kids that aren't your joint biological kids, then you need to especially make sure to have these issues addressed. There are, just as you can designate a healthcare surrogate for yourself, you can designate healthcare surrogates for minor children. You can set up a pre-need guardian declaration for not only yourself, but you can set it up for your children. That will get the process started, to get the conversation started, and at least you've put some things in place, to deal with these not so usual issues for most families.
Gosh, so many things to think about. I'm so
And then
glad
when you
we
think
spent
about
time thinking
those,
about it.
yeah, you think about those, and then you've got 10 more things to think about. So
Yeah.
that's
Oh,
the problem. Or I should say that's the beauty and the excitement about being in the law is, once you figure out one thing, you've discovered 5 new things that you didn't know or thought you knew that now, it's a continuing learning process.
yes. And we're thankful that you're willing to educate us to let us know what the next best step would be. So thank you for that.
Yes.
And I know we've got another conversation about young adults, not married, no kids.
Yes, the
Um,
18-year-olds.
yeah, they need some help too. They need a plan. So thank you
Yeah,
for being willing to give that to us, and I look forward to that next conversation.
absolutely.
All
See
right.
you
I'll see
soon.
you later. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.